All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for another episode of Conversations with Dene, your family law and wellness needs. This is our second episode. We are happy to have you join us. I'm Dene Matthews. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and I'm the owner of the Dunn Matthews Law Firm, which is a small boutique law firm in Atlanta, Georgia. And we are excited today to welcome Tracy Poizner to join us. And if you have been following us before, you know that we started this series with the hope to encourage, educate, and elevate men and women alike in their daily lives and their domestic matters that intertwine. And so today, Tracy will be joining us. She is a life coach for stepmoms and a parenting strategist for divorced dads. She helps steer them in the way to navigate their custody conflicts as well as parental alienation. She's also the host of the Essential Stepmom podcast and a mentor to over 1,200 members of the Spectacular Stepmom Facebook community. Her Facebook group for dads is called One for the Dads, and she's also active on the Visible Man Discord server, where she participates in discussions with both men and women on the topic of men's mental health. And so, without further ado, I will bring on Tracy Poizner.
Hi,
Tracy, thank you for joining us today.
this is wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we're happy to have you. If you could just go ahead and start off by telling our viewers a little bit about yourself, how you came to be, who you are today and what you're doing.
Mhm. Okay, well, I'm also a mom. I started out as a mom and I got divorced when my daughter was about 11 years old. And my divorce was a pretty straightforward and easy one. And yeah, I don't know if there's any particular reasons for that, but I was very aware of doing things to make things, as easy as possible for my daughter. That was really, really important for me. And I got along pretty well with her dad in the years after that. We didn't have a lot, there wasn't a lot of tension. But some years later, when I got together with my now husband, his divorce was a very, very different one. And so I am the stepmom of his three kids, but for the last 15 years, I've been going through a very high conflict um, divorce kind of situation. And I really, um, I realized at one point that I had really learned a lot about the stepmom role and about what I had to do that was different from what I thought, and about how our new family was so different from the families that both of us had had before. And I have a lot of background in natural wellness. That's what I've been doing for 20 years. I'm a natural health consultant. I have a practice here in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, where I live. And I really felt like I had used every single scrap of what I knew, what I'd learned in over 20 years of that practice. Like I needed all of it in my life, in my daily life, to make sense of what was happening, to be able to help the other members of my family, my husband and his kids, my own daughter. And I thought, what do people do who don't happen to have this specific kind of niche background in family dynamics and in childhood development and in human psychology and all the different things that I've learned. So I just decided to get out there and kind of share our winning strategies with people, and not just to share them, but to validate our winning strategies. I really wanted to know, like, was this a one-off? Like when I did this or that, when my husband, reacted in this kind of way, like, was this a one-off thing, or is there some kind of continuity? Is there a model um, that other families could follow to make it be successful? So I have talked to so many hundreds of stepmoms, and yeah, there are over 1,200 women in my Facebook community now, and we're very actively discussing stuff every day. So I really feel like I've kind of validated certain principles that I can speak to that can help anybody.
And I like how you mentioned validation, because so many times I think men in general when they're going through this co-parenting thing, don't necessarily feel validated by their ex-wife or ex-girlfriend or what have you, even though they're doing all the things. They're jumping through the hoops. They're, attending the school programs. They're doing everything they're supposed to be doing. But they feel like no one's listening. No one's appreciative. No one's, validating and acknowledging their successes. And so I
Yeah.
really like that point that out. And so you, I've heard you talk about leading from or being in a position of leadership. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and what you kind of mean by parenting from a place of leadership?
Yeah, I think that when you're raising kids in a first family, like a traditional nuclear family where the mom and dad are both the biological parents of the child, you can access all kinds of parenting strategies. Some of them might be better than others or whatever, but like the place where a lot of parents end up where kids are pushing the boundaries is at some point you have to say, because I'm your dad, like because I said so. You have to do this because I said so. If you don't do this, I'm taking away your phone. I'm taking away the screen time. You're grounded, whatever. When you're a single dad or when you're separated or divorced or repartnered, you lose access to that kind of parenting strategy because there's a mom in the other house who can say, well, that's bullshit. Like, you can't let
Right,
your dad talk to you that way. You don't have to listen to him, or you don't
right.
have to listen to what his girlfriend says. She's nobody to you. And and the guys end up kind of paralyzed. Like they don't
Yeah.
have any, they don't know what else to do. They either try to clamp down and be like, okay, you're going to listen to me because I said so. And then there's a big fight. And then the kids get to say, I'm not going to dad's anymore. I don't like it over
Mhm.
there. And mom, instead of saying, well, you better listen to your dad because he's your dad. No, she's going to take advantage of that and say, oh, you don't want to go to dad's? That's fine with me. So
Mhm.
there's a whole new dynamic and you have to be smarter. You need a whole new parenting paradigm to get around
Right.
this problem. And what I understand that works is that instead of leaning on authority
Mhm.
as your, as your sort of model, that you move more towards leadership and imagine that you are leading your kids towards adulthood. And that involves knowing why you're doing something. To be a
Mhm.
good leader, like you have to know where you're leading them actually and why
Right,
that's important for you. Why your destination is a better destination than another one, and that
right.
you have the map to get you there. And that standing in that kind of place where you're feeling really motivated by your own important values,
Mm.
that helps you not to get sideswiped by something that just happens randomly and that where you just react with a kind of a knee jerk or a reflex, an automatic response that you learned a long time ago. It's what your dad did, or it's what your mom did, or it's what feels right in the moment. You know, you need to respond as a leader and say, what's happening here? What's the problem actually? How can I solve it? Where do I need, what's my long term goal? Where am I trying to get this kid to go? So that you develop a better strategy for dealing with the day to day.
But then what about, so, you kind of talked about when you're in one household and you have all of these remedies available to you as far as discipline and all that's concerned, but now that you're removed from that and you've got a mom and children in the house and you're somewhere totally different, it becomes more difficult to do that. Like, what kind of tips or advice do you have for him to still be able to, I mean, he knows what that leadership vision is, right? Like, he knows where he wants his kids to go. He knows where they need to go. But how does he still maintain a level of discipline and leadership over his kids and not have them start to pull back, or mom be able to use that as a way to get in the middle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there are a lot of tools and techniques for this specific kind of parenting,
Hmm.
and a lot of them feel counterintuitive. Like you feel like you're maybe enabling bad behavior when you don't kind of clamp down on it in the way that you're used to doing. But this is going to require a lot more conversation, and it requires an understanding of what's happening. You need to know that the kids really do want to be held. They want to be corralled in a sense. They want to know that they can push all the boundaries and that you can still hang on to them and that they're safe with you. And so much of the acting out and the behavior that we see in kids is, testing limits is about feeling safe. It's about feeling safe. I read in a book once, and I just thought this was a wonderful quote. The author said, kids don't test limits they don't push limits in order to change them. Mm-hmm. They push limits in order to make sure that they haven't moved.
True.
And I think that when a dad can really feel secure in his self to say, it's okay if you're mad at me. Mm-hmm. I still love you when you're mad at me, but right. I'm your dad and I need to take care of you and I need for you to be safe. And when you're doing this thing, I know that it's not really safe for you. I know it's not pointing you in the right direction. And I'm your dad. I care about what happens to you. I have to know that I'm doing this job.
Yeah.
I have to make you a safe person. And I think when you're super consistent with that message, when you're not resorting to let's say for sure not physical violence, but you're not resorting to yelling, you're not, yelling is kind of a panicking from the parent. The kid needs to see that they can unleash like the fury on you and you can stand in that storm and just be okay with it. And that's where it feels like, well, if I don't punish the kid for having a temper tantrum, like, what am I doing? But no, you just have to stand there and not be moved by it.
Because they're people too, in my opinion, right? Like they're people, they've got emotions, they've got feelings that they may not know how to control, just like we've got some sometimes that we don't really know how to control and what are we going to do? And so I definitely agree with that. And so basically you're saying just believing in you and knowing that your role as dad still matters. It still has value. It still has a place. And being able to make sure that your kids understand that you're confident in your own place, even though you're removed.
That's right. And I mean, there are a ton of ways that you can establish a parenting connection, even if you don't have any contact with your kids. We can maybe link it later, but I have some videos on YouTube about exactly how to do that, like how to be a dad, even if you have no contact with your kids at all. Like there are a lot of things that you can still do. The reason that I choose to work with dads and their new partners instead of like the moms and their new partners is just based on my own life experience. Like I got nothing to offer the moms because I didn't live that experience of having an ex-husband who was really interfering with my parenting. I don't know anything about that, but I did live this experience of my husband going through that, and he and I found ways around those problems so that eventually his kids did decide as teenagers to come and live here all the time with us. And also, it's not over when that happens, right? There's still a ton of conflict happening inside the child, even when they live in one house or the other. Doesn't matter where they are, they're still full of conflict. So there are a lot of things, really practical things that you can do to make it happen. But sorry, I got sidetracked, and I wanted to say that
you're good. You're good.
The reason that I feel so confident about working with dads is that one of the things that I know from my long study of childhood development and family dynamics is that the role of the dad, the role of any father in the life of any child, only becomes more and more and more important the older the child gets, because the dad's job energetically is to guide this child out into the world, into adulthood. Mm-hmm. The mother's job is about the sort of security on the home front and love, right. Like feeling loved and nurtured. The dad's job is about charisma and competitiveness and getting things done and being effective and efficient and successful.
Right.
Those are dad energy things. And of course, moms do that too, right? Moms have dad energy, dads have mom energy. Everybody does both. But the actual dad becomes a more and more valuable person the older that the kid gets. So there's a natural drive of the child to seek out the dad, even if they've been kept away from them for a long time, because mom says, your dad's a deadbeat, he doesn't give me any money, never mind about him. There is an inner drive in the child to connect with the dad. And that is going to, like, nature is going to take care of this as
Yeah.
time
And
moves
I
along.
tell
So,
my clients that all the time, my male clients who are like, she keeps telling them this or she keeps telling them that. You just keep pushing forward. You just keep doing what you're supposed to do. And eventually, the older that they get, they're going to realize those things that mom lied about, those things that mom was deceitful about or manipulative about. They will see it for themselves when they start to become more, wiser human beings and just their eyes are wide open, right? And so I definitely agree with that. So then what do you, when you're dealing with someone, you made the statement that no matter where the kids live, right? Because we've got some people who really want their children to live with them and they think that's going to solve all the issues. But like you just said, it doesn't, right? Because you're still dealing with this high conflict individual. What do you do then? Like, how do you, even if they're now in your home, how do you deal with that high conflict individual who just can't seem to let it go?
well, it's really important to rein in the high conflict individual. So, like, we have to learn how to deal with a high conflict person. And there are tools about that, but I would say the number one thing would be to get that your ex-spouse onto a co-parenting app.
Absolutely.
There are
Sure.
many of them. There are free ones and paid ones, but you've got to be on an app. And yes, the person is going to complain. They're going to say, no way, I'm not doing it. But you walk through the steps of, giving them the information, how to get on the app. And every time they message you in another way, you say, I put the response in the app.
Go to the
And
app.
just like,
Right.
you don't entertain any other communication
Yeah.
except on the app. And that plays a huge role. Like, so many of my clients say, can't believe the peace in my house of the last 2 weeks. Like, why didn't we do this years ago? So, the app is a huge
Yeah,
piece of it.
it
But
is.
the other part is that the child still has to deal with this, let's say mom in this case, because I'm talking
Right.
about dads, and the ex in this case is the mom. The child has to deal with this mom for the rest of their life. You don't
Right.
get to divorce your mother, right? So you need to focus on what the child needs to feel okay. And the conversations have to be more and more about, like, I'm sorry that you're in this conflict, or how does it feel when your mom says that to you? Like, mom says that you're a piece of whatever because you didn't do this or that or whatever. Instead of saying, well, your mom's a lying this and that,
SOB, whatever.
you have to say, how do you feel when that happens? Like, what are you feeling when your mom says stuff like that? I'm sorry that happens. And just keep it about the kid and their feelings and not about mom and what she's saying.
Right.
And, you can say, I'm sorry your mom thinks that. And, maybe at some point she'll know that that's not true. I think your mom is still really angry at me, and I'm sorry that she's taking that out on you. You don't deserve that. You can say, does that make you feel mad at me? You're allowed to feel mad at me. I make mistakes. I'm a human being. And it's okay with me if you're mad at me. You know what? I still love you even when you're mad at me. You're allowed to be mad at me. You're allowed to tell me what you don't like, Like, getting over that hump of like apologizing, being able to apologize to your child and saying, I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to be a better husband to your mom. Like, that's on me. I'm sorry that I did that.
Acknowledging that you're
You have
human.
to be in the middle. You acknowledge that you're human. Like, you're allowed to make mistakes and move on. And
Right.
if you keep it pure, if you
Hmm.
keep it about the child and how the child feels, and let the child offload their big emotions and their confusion. And sometimes it's about just setting the record straight and saying, I'm sorry your mom remembers it that way. I remember it like this,
Right. Because there's
or
two sides
whatever.
to every story, right?
There's two sides to every story, and
Teaching it early.
sometimes the child just needs to hear, like,
Hmm.
there's another piece of this. Now, I
Right.
would not go into, your mom
Adult
said that,
detail.
there's rid of it. Like, it doesn't, this is such an important piece.
Hmm.
It doesn't, it doesn't serve the child to actually know that their mom is lying to them.
Right.
And that's another really counterintuitive thing. You think, like, once my child knows that mom is just lying, like, this problem is going to be gone because then they're going to believe me. It is a point of terrible, terrible insecurity to
Hmm.
have to live in the home with a parent who could lie to you about something important,
Yeah.
because you have no more security
It
then.
adds another
It
level of
doesn't help
anxiety,
them. Exactly.
you know?
That's a really great way of putting it. It adds
Yeah.
another level of anxiety. So you might feel better saying,
Hmm.
like, I'm getting this off my conscience. Like, your mom is telling you lies. I'm going to tell you the truth. And then you're going to know. The
Hmm.
child now has to carry this burden of, what does it
Who do I
mean?
believe?
And
Right.
who do I believe? My mother is a liar. How is that possible?
Right.
It's just a terrible conflict inside of them. So you really need to soft pedal anytime you have the urge to
Hmm.
just say, this is not the story. There will be a moment where your child will see it clearly for themselves. That's
Hmm.
a moment of their own development.
Revelation.
It's a revelation, but it has to come where they have the personal maturity to handle
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And, in our particular case, my stepson was 13, and he just had that light bulb moment where he saw everything clearly, and he said, I want to come live with you. And until that moment, he had been like the number one supporter of mom. He was the caregiver and the little, the little soldier
Hmm.
for his mom. And when he realized that it was the opposite of what he thought, and that mom was, making up stories, in his case, he processed it very quickly and just
Hmm.
said, get me out of here. Like, I don't want to live there anymore. But it happened in a very different way for the siblings.
Hmm.
And each of them is working on that in their own way.
And I think it carries over into adulthood too, right? When you're not cognizant of the child's feelings and the child's emotional well being, and you're more so focused on what the other parent is doing or saying, and how that feels for you as opposed to your kid. I think that goes over into adulthood, and that child then becoming that adult who is constantly wondering if someone's lying to them, is constantly wondering if they can trust this person, or is this person going to turn their back on them, or if you tell me you're going to show up, you're not going to show up, or all of those things kind of just dump over like a big
It's
old waterfall into
so
adulthood, you
it's
know?
so amazing that you're talking about that right now, because that is like, if you had a camera in my house right now, that's what you'd be
What's
seeing.
happening?
And those kids are 21 and 23,
Yeah.
and they are having a lot of trouble with, um, trusting their reality and trusting themselves in their perception of reality on a really, really deep level. So, like, these are big, big issues, and they don't just go away when the kid turns 18 or when they move in with you, or
Right.
whatever. But if you can guide your kids through it with the understanding of what's happening, then
Mhm.
they're going to be just that much better off at the other end.
Yeah. I think that's definitely important to do. And so I think the last thing I kind of want to touch on today is when I was talking to you in preparation for this interview, you mentioned something that I thought was really profound, and you said the undeletable dad. And I was like, "What? What did you just say? You need to trademark that." Like, talk to us a little bit about the importance, right? Because there's so many studies out there about the importance of dads being involved in their children's lives from an academic standpoint, a mental standpoint, just making sure that they are woven in and not forgotten about or deleted by mom. So talk to us a little bit about that and your thoughts about on, you know, the undeletable dad.
I'm so happy that you love that. That really makes me smile. So yeah, that's my website, undeletabledad.com, and it's the name of my program. I have a 6-month program.
Mhm.
It's a big package program for dads around parenting strategy for this kind of post-divorce landscape.
Yeah.
It's about like even custody strategizing
Hmm.
around not how to get the maximum custody, but how to get what you need in your relationship in spite of whatever kind of custody you end up with,
Hmm.
and even like financial vulnerability, because this can be something that sucks, as you know very well, it can suck tens of thousands of dollars over many years or more. I mean, I'm certainly working with guys who have spent $150,000 in court, and then that you're not done yet, right? You're paying child support, you're paying spousal support, you're on the hook for college fees. Really, it can run into the millions of dollars. So we have to look carefully at where there are um, vulnerabilities, where you're
Right.
open to just bleeding money from this situation, because that's money that could be going to your kids eventually, right?
Yes.
But like it's the thing that really breaks my heart. I mean, the way that my husband was threatened with being deleted actually from his kid's life, and that was something that was very much an agenda of their mom. Like, she really
Mhm.
worked hard to do everything to delete him from their lives, and he did all the right moves to make sure that that didn't happen. And it was not easy for 1 second. Like, it was a real project for
Yeah.
many years. So I know how hard he worked at it, but it's so important because kids are not whole. Like, kids
Mhm.
are made, like every child who's ever born is half mom and half dad, and nothing
No way
else.
to avoid it.
Right? Every cell of your body is
Right.
half mom and half dad, and no other ingredients. That's
Nothing.
all. So once your parents split up,
Hmm.
you're in this position of where half of you, you're not okay. You're not whole. Half of you is actually bad wherever you're standing. When you're
Right.
at mom's house, any of your characteristics, your physical characteristics, your personality characteristics, your desires, the way your head works, like anything that comes from your dad is kind of frowned on at mom's
Right.
house. She doesn't want to see it. She doesn't want to celebrate it. And when you go to dad's, he's likely to say, now you sound just like your mom. Or, I hate it when you laugh like that. You remind me of your mom. Like, those things slip out because these
Right.
people like don't like each other anymore. And that
Mhm.
means that you don't like half of your child. It's in their DNA. There's no other way to say it.
Mhm.
And kids need a place to feel whole. They need a place where they can love their mom and their dad and all of themselves at the same moment,
Yeah.
not one after another. So, that's why when you delete the dad, you are sending a message to the child that half of themselves is not okay, and it never will be okay.
Yeah.
And there will never be a way to completely please your mom, because you can't delete your dad from your own self. And when you try to do it, it really leads to psychiatric problems, not just emotional problems.
Yeah.
So what I see now is that we're in a world where 50% of kids are living this reality
Mhm.
of their parents are separated and they're living in one place or the other or going back and forth. And there's this kind of tsunami of new adults coming into society who are broken people because of this.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just urgent. to fix this problem. Like, we can't delete the dads. And I'm going to say that I know there are some guys out there who are deleting the moms. Like, it happens. It's not
Absolutely. Absolutely.
restricted. It's not
Absolutely. It's not
restricted, but it is.
one-sided.
It's overwhelmingly a
Yeah.
problem of men, and that's because every divorced dad is kind of a deadbeat, right? Doesn't matter what he's doing. Doesn't matter if he's a full-time dad of the kids. If you're in the walking through a Walmart with your kids, the people are likely to believe that this is your 1 hour a week with your kids, not
Right.
that you're on it all the time, right? So, like, we need to change the societal archetypes and
Yeah.
preconceptions, but really it's very, very important that the dads get the support that they need to not allow themselves to be deleted. You
Right.
can win this.
One of the calls that I hate the most is, hey, what's your issue? What's going on? And then it's, oh, I know dads can't get custody. I know that that's not an option for me, but I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z, or I want to be able to whatever, since custody is not an option for me. But it is an option for you. And
Yes.
changing your mindset and knowing and trusting that you can get custody of your kids if, you've got everything in order, everything's aligned. It's okay, but we have to be able to change that narrative and let more and more people know that this is an option. It's not just about mom because she's mom and because I birthed you and because I, went through 18 hours of labor and whatever. It's not just about that. It's about who can care for them more, better than the other individual, who can co-parent better, who can make sure that they're going to turn into productive members of society, right? And I think the narrative for far too long has been on the wrong side, in my opinion. And it's focusing more on the kids' needs and not necessarily just this default individual. And so I like that you bring up the undeletable dad. And I think a lot of times dads may sometimes give up because she is high conflict and she does make things difficult and she doesn't answer the phone, or if they've got a cell phone, she turns it off or coming up with excuses. And I think it's important for them to realize that they just got to keep going. You keep calling, you keep texting. You're not harassing. Okay, you're not being a harassing individual, but you're continuing to do the things that one is going to back you up in court. First of all, I mean, you've got everything that you need to show that this person's not been doing what they're supposed to do from a co-parenting standpoint. But then two, you're showing your kid later on in life that I did do what I was supposed to do. I did fight. I did try and get whatever I needed to do and get. I tried to come
Yes.
to your, award ceremony at school. My name wasn't on the forms, whatever, like I did it. And I just think that's a huge part of making sure that someone else doesn't control your destiny as a dad and tries to delete you. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you for joining us today. I know that you mentioned some resources that you've got, and you mentioned Undeletable Dad and you mentioned YouTube, but if you can kind of just give our viewers a little bit more information about how to find you, how to get your resources, so that they can make sure that they're pushing forward on this with themselves.
Sure. So the website is undeletabledad.com. There's a YouTube channel called Undeletable Dad that has, I think, just the 5 videos on it, but they're a series about what to do if you lose access to your kids. My podcast for stepmoms is called Essential Stepmom. And actually, a lot of the podcast episodes that I do are really for both the stepmom and the biological dad who she lives with.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the women who listen tell me that they've found that their husband is like binging episodes without them. So that's kind of fun. And essentialstepmom.com is the website that I work from also. And I have a Facebook group for stepmoms that is called The Spectacular Stepmom, just to be different and confusing. But you're welcome to send a join request there, and we'd be happy to have you.
And just so that our viewers and listeners are aware, stepmom doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to be married, right? Like it could be
Oh yeah, no, of
girlfriend, it
course.
could be whatever, and you're looking to make sure that the man in your life has a great relationship with his children, and that you can weave in and be a great proponent and help him get to where he needs to be. And like,
I'm so glad you said that because you asked me something quickly before we got on, which was like how the woman can help,
yeah,
how the new partner can help. And it's like that's it. You hit the nail on the head. It's all about your job is to help the relationship between dad and his kids to
yeah.
be as good as it can be. And the relationship with you, that's going to come way, way, way down the road. So just if you focus on putting dad and kids together in every way that you can think of, that's exactly what you have to do to help.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Well, again, thank you, Tracy, for joining us. I greatly appreciate you taking out your time. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us on this episode of Conversations with Dene, your family law and wellness needs. Again, I'm Dene Matthews with the Dunn Matthews Law Firm, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your time. Day, thank you for joining us.